All right, welcome back to another episode of the Kitchen Table Podcast where business gets done. I'm your host, Ken Baden, and this is the first episode post Baby Baden. So, like Brian said, I'm on zombie mode. And before I tail off because I'm on zombie mode, let me introduce our today's guest, which is Brian Seidensticker with Tax Sale Resources. Brian, how are you today?
I'm good, Ken. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Pleasure to have you, my friend. Like I said, you're my first guest since I came
You
back
are.
for air.
Congrats, sir. Congrats. Yeah, you're definitely on zombie mode. I'm a couple years out of that, but the thought of it, I guess, still is slightly terrifying to me, to be honest.
No one's prepared me adequately for what it really was. I don't think you can be though, man. Honestly, like people
Yeah.
try and I'm like, yeah, it'll be cool or we'll get her on her schedule and she does not care about our schedule. She really just doesn't sleep at night. So that's cool. That's been the theme, especially recently because she was doing good. She's 3 weeks on Thursday, so 3 weeks yesterday. She was doing good in that like she started getting like 3 hours, believe it or not, from like midnight or 1 o'clock to three, get up, bottle, back down, another 3 hours, maybe four. And I'm like, dude, we can do this. I can work with that. Like now, last couple nights, nah,
Not so much. Yeah.
nope, just nah, I'm not sleeping at all, actually.
Well, if,
Nighttime is not point. What are we talking about? I'm sleeping during the day.
yeah,
I'm done.
yeah. There's only, well, I'll say if anybody adequately prepares anybody for having a kid, they probably scare them away from ever having a child.
uh,
I think that's one of the reasons why you don't really remember a whole lot from those first 18 months. And then you forget about it and you're like, oh, number two, I forget about all this. And that's thought number one. And then I had two pieces of advice, if there's any that I can give you, Ken. One
please.
was that everything is a phase, and some are longer than others. So yeah, even if for me, it was like once you got used to, like I can get used to this, then they change, right? Or I don't know, our latest was our 4-year-old. He had a heck of a time not sleeping in our bed, right? But all of a sudden didn't. It was like overnight. I'm not sure what changed, but it happened. And then the other one was on our second kid. I heeded this advice better. It was sleep when they sleep. And otherwise, if you try to stay up when they're sleeping, it'll be rough. So I don't know.
I got the first piece, but to your point, like if I slept when she slept, I'm like, I have to work. You know what I mean? Like she just
Yes.
decided that she's gonna sleep during the day, and I'm like, this isn't gonna work, man. Like the first few weeks, I stayed home, and I found myself getting up at like 10. And I'm like, what are you doing, girl? Like, because she wasn't going to bed till like 4, 5. And to your point, we're like, we got to get some sleep, but we'll figure it out, man. I have at least tried to heed that. My wife's done much better at that, but coming back to the office, I'm not given as much opportunity to do that. But I really like the phase thing. I've heard a couple times too, which is more terrifying to be honest with you than anything else because it's like I hate unpredictability, but it's a kid. I'll get used to it, I'm sure. So, but I'm very blessed. Wife's happy, wife's healthy, kids healthy. So I'm happy to be back, man, and
Yeah.
happy to be doing the show with you. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your advice. So let's get right into it, man. I mean, tell us a little bit about your business, what you guys do, and then let's get right into how you got into that.
Yeah, I guess to kind of tell about the journey a little bit. I did not grow up with childhood aspirations of being a tax sale expert, if you want to call it that. I don't even know what that means, but I didn't even know what the heck it was till I was, in my 20s and on the wrong side of a lien. But I'll take a little step backwards from there of how the heck I got to that point. But I was actually an aerospace engineer by trade or
Oh
by
wow.
school, and worked on some missile defense programs out of college for about 10 years, which was fun and cool, and it sounds really cool, and it was fun, and it had its moments. But a couple things I had epiphanies I had. One is I realized how much banging my head against the wall I was doing trying to get to those cool moments. And I call it, 2 years of red tape for 2 minutes of cool, dealing with MDA contracts and all that fun stuff. And then The second one was I went on vacation for 6 weeks and I was very, very nervous about being gone that long and what was I going to miss and had all these things that I knew I had to do. And I came back and it was like I never left. I basically stepped right in and I realized how much I was running on a hamster wheel on a daily basis, and not really realizing how little progress I was making. And I can't say culmination of those two things. I quit the next day. It wasn't that cool of a story, but those are definitely pushed me in the direction of deciding I need to do something different. And that something different initially was when I was flipping homes, and this was in 2005 to 2008 timeframe. And it was really the tail end of that is where I got introduced to the whole tax lien, tax deed phenomenon. I was flipping a house and ended up upside down in one at the start of the I guess Great Recession as we call it today. And I was doing that in Montana, which is where I was originally from.
Hmm.
I was living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And the odd thing about the way the process works in Montana is every potential investor has to send you a certified letter that says, "Hey, I'm gonna put a tax lien on your home. You could lose your home." And so I got all these certified letters, along those lines, and that's what really started me digging into what the heck a tax lien is, what a tax sale is, and then pivoted shortly thereafter once we got through that project, and I say raised up some family friends' money and started buying tax liens. That was really the first time I ever even knew what a tax lien was.
Hmm.
It was really as as it built out. And again, I was living in Arizona. My sister, who still works with us today, she was living in Montana. One thing I did know how to do is build stuff, right? And so I built a simple website to share information because what did not exist at the time, right, which today is a little easier, but simple things like where are these auctions? When are these auctions? What are the properties lists in these auctions? And then, what is the other information on those properties so you can actually decide what's worth buying and what's not. And we were just building as an internal tool. But I had a gentleman who became a good friend at a conference who said, I was just showing him what I built. And he goes, you should make that public, charge money for it, and you might be able to offset some of your overhead.
Hmm.
And that's basically what we did. In Tax Sale Resources as a company was born. And within 2 years, the revenue we were getting from that outweighed what we were getting from tax liens. And we basically dropped the whole tax lien investing business and started doing tax sales resources as a platform full time. So a couple of reasons it made more money, but then also didn't want to compete with our clients is really what it came down to. And we were
Makes
a
sense.
a data analytics software platform and still are today. And now we basically answer those questions. We track, I don't know, 9,000 auctions nationwide on an annual basis, a couple million properties, and about $8 or $9 billion worth of assets that go through our system on an annual basis. So anyway, I don't know if that's a short story, but shorter version of an origin story for you, Ken.
No, I love it, man. I have a much more clear picture of what you got going on now. So in short, it sounds like you were in the industry, and then kind of came up with a solution for yourself, and then took that solution, and the data and the metrics and all the tools that you created, and that solution became the main business, and subsequently got out of the industry that you were in. Now you're serving and servicing, um, to not compete with your clients, but also because it's making more money. And that seems like in a nutshell. So that'd be like for me in roofing, if we came up with, a software, which there are plenty, and I've seen companies do this, right? Like a good example of that would be Leap. Leap is a tool for mainly contracts. I'm sure it does more. I don't mean to diminish it, but it became and originally was like a contracting tool. And but Leap got so big, they also sold their business, which was their remodeling business, and made quite a bit of money on that. But then they just focused on Leap, and so now they, instead of looking at everybody as competitors, now everybody is a client. So that's an interesting. I suppose would that be an accurate parallel?
Yeah, I think it'd be a great parallel. I mean, it's the epitome of you get into something, you realize that there's an inefficiency, you build a solution to that inefficiency, and realize there's a lot larger audience that could use that than just yourself. And that happens all over the place. We're just another example of that. Exactly.
A lot more folks that are investing in purchasing tax liens than you I suppose had anticipated. So now that's your main client base is different folks that are I guess I mean forgive my ignorance. I'm not super familiar with the market, but would you well you tell me who is your main client base? These companies or people, individuals that are purchasing tax liens or
Yes, it's in today's version, it's a combination of I'll say tax lien investors and tax deed investors, and really I don't know, tax deed investors are really just real estate investors that happen to understand how to acquire that real estate through the tax sale process. And so our clients are kind of a combination of yeah, I call tax lien investors more, they're more paper pushers, right? They're not, no, don't want to deal with the asset. Most of them don't want to deal with the real estate assets, similar to like a mortgage investors type of thing. And then, standard real estate investors that are, tax sale properties are usually pretty delinquent. So they're the fix and flipper audience, HGTV, when you watch any of those shows and they walk into the property and it's just horrible, right? It's got stuff everywhere, full remodel scenario. That is typically what a tax sale property looks like when you walk into it.
is that likely because I'm going to assume, but I could be wrong, but I mean like if it's a tax sale situation, is it somebody who hasn't paid their taxes and now they're foreclosing on their home?
That's exactly right, right? So it's kind of one of those if it hasn't had their taxes paid for several years, it's usually in a pretty rough state.
And that's just on the home itself, like they haven't paid taxes on the home, or could it be a situation where they haven't paid taxes elsewhere and they come for the home, or a combination of the two?
Well, that style of foreclosure is different, right? An IR state, state or IRS lien, and they, to my knowledge, they don't necessarily foreclose. Maybe they do. I'm not as familiar with that
I don't,
process, but
yeah.
the ours is usually just property taxes that went unpaid for multiple years, right? That
Yeah.
resulted in some sort of foreclosure, and then
Maybe someone abandoned the property or they just couldn't afford it. And then if they're in that situation, it's unlikely that place is well maintained. I get it.
right. Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. So I get it. So it's a little bit of a niche market and that like it's probably, not maybe your traditional way of procuring properties, but I'm sure there are like very specific investors that's their whole bag and I would imagine they get it for a nice little discount and there got to be that person that sees it for they see a rundown situation as an opportunity, right? Like the
Yes. They definitely got to
visionary.
be. These are rarely move-in ready, properties. So they definitely got to have that vision
Yeah.
of what is the potential? What could they turn it into? And definitely the fix and flipper community, suits them well for sure.
That's cool, man. So that was originally something that you went from engineering to real estate investing, and then really found a home in buying these tax lien properties. And now you've got a solution for folks that buys these tax lien properties. So, tell me about the business and kind of what you do for folks that that's their niche. What are you're taking data and kind of making this like an easier scenario for them, or tell us a little bit about what exactly your company does for these folks.
Yeah. So really. Well, and today, right, there's really two primary services that we provide. One is a platform, right? I like to use the analogy. It's Zillow, but it's just distressed real estate only. Like you'll never find any of these properties on Zillow, and we won't find every property on our platform, right? They're kind of mutually exclusive. But for anybody that is looking to invest in the space, they can go on the platform, apply criteria, decide, I want to buy a single family home, three bed, two bath, or I want to buy liens on that same profile, right? Or, I like to use the analogy, if you were looking for bowling alleys, you can put that criteria in there. And the software will help you identify these are the properties that are going up for sale. Here's when those auctions are, and then you can plan on attending. And that's the platform. Now we in 2020 we actually started a fund because one of the things that we realized is this style of buying assets is very cash intensive. You can't go get bank financing. You have to have typically cash in hand, in the form of of a cashier's check, and most people don't have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to buy this stuff, and so most folks in the space were cash limited, and so we started a fund really with the goal of working with local partners, as we call profit share partners, and they identify properties they want to buy, and then we come in as kind of a capital partner and acquire the asset. They end up managing that property through the finish, and then there's a profit share structure at the end of the day when we dispose of that asset, whatever that disposition process looks like. And so there's kind of we like, I don't know, gets back to me being an engineer. I like to see big, juicy problems and see if I can solve them. But initially, it was the basic things of when and where and like how do you decide what to buy. And then the latest iteration was how do we enable folks that are doing this to do it on a larger scale, and that's the start of Mountain North Capital. And those are the two main things that we do today.
Wow. Okay. So you have a capital. I mean, it sounds like an investment. So you have you can lend money and you can help folks acquire these properties as well. Correct?
Well, we're not technically we're not a lender, right?
Okay.
We
Excuse
we
me.
don't lend, right? It's a profit sharing structure where our partner identifies the property, we buy it, right? I'll say on our behalf, and then we work with that partner on through the project. And so we're not like a hard money lender where it's like, hey, here's the asset, I'll give you money, go buy it. We don't work that way. It's a unique structure. We can go into the weeds as much as you'd like if you want.
I don't know if, well, I feel like you really wanted to focus on. I'm just, when I get intrigued and my ADHD starts
Yeah.
going off, we can get in trouble.
I
So,
like, yeah. So I'm more than happy to dive into any of that stuff. And
well, I want to make sure if we're, so let's, and I may come back to that, but I want to make sure our listeners get, and I am definitely intrigued, but, in today's market, especially, right? I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but would you say that it is correct with today's market, the market volatility, is there a little bit of an uptick in these tax lien properties that are coming available?
I'd say not yet, because usually there's a
Okay.
year or two lag before you see it. I would say that it's coming.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with
It's
the,
like
hey,
a good news, bad news, like
yeah,
everybody right now feels the kind of the hit and the pinch in the market. But to your point, like it takes a little bit of time for people feel it that much, so much so that where they can't pay for their properties. So
yeah.
you do believe it's, so do you think we're in a recession?
Well, depending on how you measure it, right? I think we're either there or it's right on the hairy edge, right? Like all the stats that you read in economical or economics, folks that I follow, they're all basically saying, pick your metric. Some say we are and some say we're not, which tells me like we're right on the hairy edge.
Right.
And if it's a trend, right, then we've obviously been heading there for a couple of years, and if that trend continues, then that's where we'll be, right, whether it's today
Right.
or 6 months from today. But I think that's definitely on its way, and so we'll see an uptick in I'll say distressed real estate, whether it's mortgage, foreclosure scenarios, tax sales, which will lag by 2, 3, 4 years. They're coming, right? And then, whether or not, people look forward to that, right? Those opportunities, right? I think it's a mental state, rather that's, hey, is the sky falling because of a recession, or is that, hey, there's opportunities out there.
Right,
Those
right, right.
up to the individual. I don't necessarily root for a recession, but our industry or our business typically is counter-cyclical and does better in that
Mhm.
scenario.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like it's an opportunity, right? Like, anytime any of these things like recessions, bear market or volatile.
Yes, with volatility, there's opportunities.
Yeah, yeah,
How
that's
I view it.
precisely what I'm looking to say. I mean, like people have to be able to see the opportunity. I mean, like no matter how you spin it, I mean, like even in business, like okay, well, there's an opportunity somewhere, right? Like whether
Yep.
it's other businesses that got unfortunately are closing their doors or diversifying or just or perhaps you have capital saved up and you're able to be more aggressive in a market where no one's being aggressive, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like these are chances for you to take a big step forward. It's just how do you look at it, right? Like that's the way I look at it currently. Like I don't want to be a fool, and go crazy and buying all this advertising space or something. But if advertising space is coming more available because folks are doing it less, there's an opportunity.
Yes.
You
Oh,
know
for
what I
sure.
mean?
I think as far as real estate, which is what I can speak to, like anybody that can figure out the right way of converting a commercial building into residential building, has a winner in what's coming because there's no shortage of demand on the residential side, and there's going to be a lot of commercial real estate available for very low prices, and
Right? Why? That's you're absolutely right. Like, we're looking to purchase a commercial building here soon ourselves. Like, we got to go hit our goals, but it's like we've already talked to a few folks. Like, oh, there's gonna be plenty of options. I'm like, well,
yeah.
that's good and bad to your point, right? Like, I guess it goes right back to what we were just talking about. Like, okay, that kind of stinks, I guess, because there are so many office buildings available. Kind of what does that tell you? But on the other hand, if you're looking for an office building, it's pretty fortuitous, right? Or if you're looking to invest in an office building. But I didn't think about that. If you could find a way, and I'm sure there's one, to convert an office building into a residential building, man, you got something going on, right? Because there's like very little residential space. I mean, it's a huge demand.
Yes. Yeah, there's no shortage of demand on the residential side and no shortage of supply on the commercial side. So it's like, how can you marry those two? And there's probably federal programs out there that even incentivize people to do, right? And that's kind of if you can find that, secret sauce or magic spell to get all those things to come together, then you've got a winning recipe there.
So what do you make of just the current market and where it's headed? You think it's getting ready to get worse, better? I mean, you kind of rely on, I'm assuming you strike me as a very intelligent, you strike me as somebody who would be keeping his finger on the pulse of what is, especially when your business is going to be relying on it. So what do you think we're headed towards and for how long? And I know you're not a economist, but just
Yeah.
curious.
Definitely not an economist, right? But I'd say from a layman's, look back and see what's happening and what is that going to result in. I don't know if it's the only time, but it's a very unique time in history where I think we're staring at, some inflation. I don't know if it's going to be a lot of inflation, but with the goal of bringing back, I'll say manufacturing or production of things in the U.S., the reality is it's a little more expensive to produce it here. And I'm all for, bringing back jobs, right? But, I think people got to realize they're going to have to pay a little more for whatever those things might be, which is, basically what inflation is, right? And so I think that's certainly on its way, hopefully not to a detrimental effect, right? But I think things are going to cost a little more. On the other side of it, right, is you have a lot of, and typically in those scenarios, right, what does the Fed do? They increase rates, right, because that's what slows inflation down typically. But on the flip side of that, you have the scenario where, housing, which is, one of the leading, if not the leading drivers of our economy, right, is stagnant. And so what does the Fed typically do to reverse that? You lower rates, right? So you've got a weird scenario of like, and I think what Powell recently had said, like they have a tough road ahead of them because the typical knobs they turn to fight those two things are opposite of one another. That's a long way of saying I don't really know what's necessarily going to happen. I think there's a lot of pressure to reduce rates because that's the easiest thing that can do that would keep housing prices, as is, if not continue to grow slightly and keep the housing demand there. And I do feel like that demand is going to override the knee-jerk reaction to what you typically do in an inflation state, right? So and I think the Fed even came out and said they do expect a couple more reductions in rates, and that overall, at least I can speak mostly to the housing industry because that's what we're both in, but I think that'll help the housing
Yeah.
industry as a whole. That doesn't mean that, from a GDP level, we might, I think we're on the hairy edge. We might dip into a recession. Are we staring down the barrel of a Great Recession or Great Depression? I don't think so. That's my opinion. I think it's just a natural cycle. I don't think it's going to last real long. And I think, one thing that the U.S. Economy does really well is bounce back. And I just don't know when, but I don't think it's going to be like a 10-year lull, right? Maybe a year or two lull. That would be I'll say, very uneducated from an economic standpoint, guess, and where we're at right now, Ken.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we've already been in that year and it's coming back soon. Cause
Yes. Yeah.
oh
Well, and you could
man,
be right. I mean, it was the, it was like, hey, is the Fed gonna, everybody wants it to drop it, and they didn't, right? And then they want to drop it, and they didn't, and they finally dropped it. So I feel like you might be right. Maybe we're through that one year.
I hope, man. I don't know. I honestly, and they only dropped it by like what? Did they actually drop the quarter of a point, right? Did they
Yeah,
do it
it was a
officially?
quarter. I think some people were hoping a half, but I think it dropped it a quarter, and they're anticipated to do that again before the end of the year. So it's headed the right direction anyway.
Yeah, yeah. To that point, I really hope, man. But what can we can control what we can control, which is being intelligent and forecasting and being proactive and anticipating the what ifs, right? As
Right.
responsible business owners, right? So, speaking of which, what are some of the things, what's in the upcoming year, end of the year, and into next year, the future for your company? What are you guys anticipating? What are you working on? What's coming next for you all?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the Mountain North Capital, the fund or profit share partner side of it is we're very much in a large growth phase right now. There was a lot of change in the tax sale space, a couple of years ago now, due to some couple of Supreme Court cases, which ultimately are going to result in some states that have never had tax deed auctions now will have them. And so overall, we're looking at growth on that phase, which is exciting. Um, as with all things, right? Call first world problems. But with growth comes some headaches, right, and some growing pains that we got to deal with. But I guess I'm an optimist by nature and an engineer, so I kind of look at those things as fun, cool problems to get to solve, and so I'm looking forward to it overall.
Fun, cool problems. I love that. That's most people might not share, but an engineer, I could totally see that. I could totally see that. What about so? What would you say the biggest challenge you guys face in your specific space is?
Well, I'll say for the exact reason I'm on here talking about, I think the space itself has a lot of negative press, negative connotation, right? I think anybody that thinks of tax liens and tax deeds as these greedy investors taking homes, and in reality, it's like anything, right? 99.9% that's not what happens, and that 0.1% where maybe there was a greedy investor that did take advantage of the system and that ended up happening. That's the one scenario that makes it on the news. But the reality is that what the whole mechanism was built in order for counties to balance budgets, right? And so if somebody didn't pay their property taxes, here's a way that investors can come in and balance that budget. So teachers get paid, so firemen get paid, so roads get paved, right? All those things can happen. And then there's got to be some enforceability of that investment. So if the less than 1% of folks that just never pay their property taxes, right, then that's really where the foreclosure takes place. In reality, those foreclosures are on properties that are very rough shape, right? They're usually the dilapidated house on the corner, right? Probably usually accumulates wanderers, right? Squatters, that type of scenario, and ultimately neighborhoods suffer from that property that's on the corner. And this mechanism allows an investor to come in, buy that property, fix it up, make it the nicest house in the street, and all the neighbors, love the investor for doing that. But that's not the story that gets told on the morning news, right? And so part of why I wanted to start, kind of this, I'll say, tour, if you will, is just trying to tell the truth of what the industry is all about. And I guess if more people realize the truth of the industry, then maybe there wouldn't be this such negative connotation to a space that in my view, is filled with great people, great investors, great, people doing great things for communities. Um, anyway, if you haven't noticed, Ken, I'm not real good at short, succinct answers. So, but there's
That's
my
good though,
biggest
man. Makes for
challenge
good
I'm
podcasts.
facing.
One word answers don't make for good podcasts, man. That's perfect. So, I mean, I think that's great, man. I love what you're doing in terms of just educating the market and making sure that, you because you're right. First thing that people think of, it's like, oh man, we're talking about people that lose their homes, and you're like, well, that's very, very rare. That's most of the time. And if it is, it's something that's been abandoned for a long time, So, I think that's important. and support to add context, and that's smart. So I admire what you're doing regarding that. If someone was looking to get a hold of you or follow what you guys are doing, or wanted to use your service, where would they find you?
But that's an easier one. Just go to our website. It's called taxsaleresources.com. If you do want to chat, there's an email on there, there's a phone number on there. You can call and actually talk to a real person. We don't have, an AI
Don't
agent
have
calling.
AI yet?
Well,
Hello.
no, well, and I think there's lots of uses for that, but I think, for our business, having real people to talk to is important. And so just mention you're listening to Brian on Ken's podcast. You'd like to chat about whatever, if that's what you want to do, and happy to connect.
I I don't know, man. I don't like that AI to me. I'm sure it'll get great, but right now it's like, all right. I can tell I can tell I'm talking to an AI, but I think if you're pre-80, you're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, well,
Um,
we'll see if they get that figured out. It's a great that doing menial tasks like, hey, I want to bust this out.
right.
Fantastic force multiplier. A replacement for a human being, not so, and hopefully never, quite frankly.
Hopefully never. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. I think so too, man. I don't want that. That scares the hell out of me, frankly. So, but that's a conversation for another day. I think these 30-minute episodes are saving me because I'm at the precipice of like,
It's
I don't
about
know if you
nap
could tell.
time.
My eyes. I've been living off of pure caffeine, so um, I do hope I wasn't completely, drab, but we had a little bit of life to me today. So I appreciate you being patient, man. Appreciate you coming on, guys. If you're in the tax lien procurement business, or if you're just looking to learn more about it, reach out to my guy. He just told you how. We'll make sure we put the show notes in the show notes where all of their availability is, because I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. And one thing we have added we started the show with this a long time ago. We just brought it back. If you were to go through the gallows and I'm always make this a long drawn out, and my vocabulary I pride myself on, but I'm running so low on energy that I'm like, I don't have it in me right now,
Well, we said that
man.
you're on zombie mode. You're allowed to.
Exactly. So to make this short and succinct, if you had one quote, one piece of advice to be remembered for the up and coming entrepreneur, something that was etched in history that had your name on it. What would that piece of advice be to the up and comer or the new business owner, possibly even looking to get into your space, but not necessarily, just one piece of advice that we would want to share with our audience?
Um, I don't. This isn't necessarily a quote, or maybe a portion of it is, but be persistent and dream big, right? Like, and there's a lot of different ways you can interpret that. But for me, it's been there's if you were to run and hide at the first show of any sort of, like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, you're probably not going to do well in the entrepreneurial world, because it is not, right? And the more and more you learn about the very successful people, you realize how many giant mountains they had to climb and hurdles they had to get over to get to get that place. So you definitely have to be persistent. And the second one of dreaming big, at least for me, is, for a good portion of my early career, as a business owner, was I stuck too much to the, like, stay in your lane, which is true, right? But if your lane is so narrow that you can't see any room to grow, then you probably need to dream a little bigger, right? And so I've become a huge fan of, maybe, aim for the stars. If you hit the moon, you're doing all right.
Mm.
And so I always try to tell, like I said, I'm in a program and I mentee new business owners. I'm like, don't forget to dream big, because if you dream small, you will achieve small. So dream big.
I love that. I love that. And I couldn't agree more, man. I mean, even when we set our goals, we're not, but set them big and big enough to where it's like, I'm going for it. Don't actually, like, go for it, because if you go for it, you're a hell of a lot, like, it's the 10x principle, right? Like, if I'm shooting for 100 million and I land at 10, but I shot for 5 and landed 2,
Right.
one's way better, right?
Which one's
So,
better? Exactly. Just,
um, I'm sorry, were you going to add to that?
I was going to say, just, and also don't forget to be happy with what you accomplish, right? So if you shoot for
Mm.
100, hit 10, don't be overly disappointed in yourself. Still
That's
not
really
enough.
important because I've made that mistake one or 100 times, because I will. I like probably many of us. I'm a bulldog when it gets to like that is happening no matter what. And then when you don't hit it, and it's like, well, yeah, but you did something extraordinary. It's like I don't care. I didn't hit my goal, right? And it's like, brother, you did really good, and you're up in a down economy. It's like I don't want to hear that, right?
Yeah.
So that is very important. Give yourself a break and celebrate your wins. Brian, thank you so much, man, for coming on today, taking the time for my audience or our audience, and we really appreciate you. I'm excited to see what you guys do in the future. Thank you for educating us on the tax lien procurement industry, and hopefully this is adds a fresh take on the industry. And I'll keep making sure that we share this and share your message, man. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Ken. Yeah, I immensely appreciate having me on. This was fun and greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Guys, we'll catch you on the next one. And listen, if your business needs some help or you're looking in the home service industry to maybe scale, uh, take your business to the next level, we may be able to help you. We're looking to take on a couple extra clients before the end of the year. Go to thekitchentable.net, click consulting, I believe is what it is. There's a link there, and we'll jump on a call and see if there's something we can do for you. Guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Until then, see you soon.